Yes.
So good afternoon, Nestle Board of Directors. We, as you already know, we are GIS Consulting, a food and beverage consulting firm that specializes in ethical, legal, and financial advisement to companies in regards to nutrition and food product labeling. Our headquarters are here in South Hadley, Massachusetts. My name is Iliana, and my colleagues are Sabrina and Gloria. Today we will be discussing some of Nestle's most notorious mislabeling scandals that been done in the past in recent years. As a result, we have come up with an 8-point plan, and which that you can follow from here on out, so you can minimize and altogether stop having these misleading labeling cases. And my colleague Gloria will discuss the 8-point plan later on at the end of the presentation. But first, I want to state some of the information about Nestle before moving on to the ethical, financial, and legal aspect. So about Nestle, you are a Swiss-based company who has made an American headquarters due to the high demand here in the American market for your products. You employ over 323,000 employees worldwide. You are the largest food and beverage company. You have more than 2,000 brands ranging from baby food, dog, cat food, and water. Your mission, as you state, is as follows. You say that Nestle is the world's leading nutrition, health, and wellness company. Your mission of Good Food, Good Life is to provide consumers with the best tasting, most nutritious choices in a wide range of food and beverage categories and eating occasions from morning to night. And lastly, Nestle, you state that your company values are reflected in the way that you operate business, meaning that you always act according legally, honestly, and respect both for the people that work in your business and you do business with. Unfortunately, due to the past mislabeling cases that have gone on with your company, you have not been going according to your values. You have not been acting legally, honestly, and with respect. And now I will pass on the presentation to my colleague Sabrina, who will be talking about the ethical aspect.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Sabrina, and I will be covering the ethical dimensions of Nestle. What Nestle promotes in their ambitions are to help millions of children lead healthy lives, improve 30 million livelihoods in communities directly connected to business activities, and strive for zero environmental impact in our operations. Nestle has had a rocky history with business ethics, starting in the 1970s when Nestle promoted the use of powdered baby formula in developing countries, steering mothers away from breastfeeding. This was a new market introduced for profit for the company in areas unfit for powdered formula. Due to a lack of resources and lack of sustainable water sanitation, these practices were not ethical in these areas. The formula was expensive and a lot of mothers couldn't sustain the cost, leading to malnutrition in babies. In 2015 as well, Gerber misrepresented natural ingredients on their labels when there were no traces of real fruits in their products. In 2002, there was a Colombian Nestle milk mislabeling scandal with the relabeling of over 300 tons of powdered milk. The milk was imported from Uganda, and it was labeled or relabeled as locally made from the Colombian Nestle company, and was redated on products that had been created a year prior. 1 month after 200 tons of milk were exposed under police order, another 120 tons of milk were discovered to be falsely labeled as well. In 2009, Greenpeace came out with a movement that exposed devastation in Indonesian rainforests due to palm oil creation. Nestle said by 2010 they would review their supply chain and move towards more environmental practices. By 2015 they claimed to be using sustainable palm oil, but the Roundtable of Sustainable Palm Oil deemed their evidence too vague to be considered sustainable. Nestle claimed to have cut back investing in unsustainably produced palm oil by 2015, then 2018, then 2020, with little change made to their production. In 2013, it was exposed by the Washington State Attorney General that the Grocery Manufacturers Association revealed high-paying donors, including Nestle, donating over $1 million to fight GMO labeling requirements on foods. These In 2016, Purina dog food came under fire after the death of a dog that ingested treats containing foreign ingredients after they were labeled as American-made. These claims to American ingredients were false labeling because the ingredients were imported from China after a 2007 FDA warning that led to the illness of the dog. In 2017, the most recent case was a Poland Spring bottle label with the mislabeling of the term spring. The FDA definition is water that flows naturally to the surface of the earth, and this differs from Nestle's method of groundwater extraction. In addition, in 2016, Nestle was under scrutiny for extracting 36 million gallons of water out of California during extreme periods of drought. The ethical concern, number one, is risking consumer welfare due to lack of information, risk of health hazards, misleading labels, and consumer rights violations to information. Another concern is environmental degradation, including the Indonesian palm oil harvesting, which is destroying rainforests and threatening wildlife. Nestle also extracting water illegally from California during high periods of drought is leading to dry stations. I will now turn over to Iliana and Enrique to cover the financial aspect.
Okay. Nestle, you were rated the world's largest consumer packaging good company in 2015 in regards to your revenue. However, after investigating your company, we discovered that your overall net sales have gone down. So steadily from 2012, 13, 14, it was slowly, steadily increasing, but in 2015 it had a downturn, and it has been ever since then. One of the reasons we came up and concluded was that due to the past and recent mislabeling scandals that your company has been a part of, some consumers feel that Nestle is just not trustworthy anymore. And so many consumers have optioned out of buying Nestle products and in turn of buying other products that are similar instead of Nestle's. In regards to some of the financial aspects, I will talk about two cases and their financial aspects. So the first one is the Poland Spring water, which led consumers to think that the water was actually from the Poland Spring in Maine, when actually it was groundwater that they were using. So not only did you mislead them in groundwater, thinking it was spring water, but it also misled them to think that it was from the Poland Spring, when actually the Poland Spring has been dried up over the past 50 years. And Nestle, you make billions of dollars in profits and pay nearly nothing for the water. Nestle alone sold $4.5 billion worth of water in 2016 in the U.S. and Canada. In relation to this, in San Bernardino, California, Nestle has long paid the U.S. Forest Service an annual rate of $524 to extract about 30 million gallons of water during droughts. So basically, you made more than 100% of profit just by doing this. The other mislabeling case was the Colombian Nestle baby milk labeling, which has Sabrina already talked about. Due to the boycotts of baby milk formula and also the other palm oil one, protesters have encouraged consumers to stop buying altogether Nestle products, and thus you have had which therefore, like as you've seen, your net sales have gone down, and this is one of the reasons why, because of the consumer being reluctant to buy your products because of the cases you have done. And now I'll pass it to Gloria.
Hi, so I'll cover the legal aspect of mislabeling. So first of all, mislabeling products leads to lawsuits as it violates 1, federal and state consumer fraud statutes, number 2, FDA regulations, and number 3, Federal Trade Commission regulations. So what happens when Nestle violates FDA regulations is that they are then handed FDA warning letters, and lawyers and consumer rights groups file class action complaints, usually within the same year. So recent mislabeling related lawsuits leveled against Nestle are the ones in 2016 and 2017. So in 2016, a class action lawsuit was filed against Nestle and Purina because the Ultramix and Organics dog foods contained foreign ingredients despite being labeled as and advertised as made with love in the USA. The lawsuit alleges that Nestle's Purina has violated the Uniform Trade Practices Act. A similar lawsuit was filed in the same year against the organics cat food for similar mislabeling issues. And in 2016, a class action lawsuit was filed against Nestle's Poland Spring, which alleges that the bottled water is actually just filtered groundwater and does not come from a spring. The plaintiffs claim that by falsely labeling groundwater as spring water, Poland Spring has been able to deceive the consumers into paying a premium. A similar lawsuit was actually filed in 2003, and Nestle paid about $10 million in discounts to consumers and charity contributions. So lawsuits also lead to 1, bad publicity, 2, boycott of Nestle products, which then lead to further scrutiny of other Nestle brands and products, and then potentially more mislabeling related lawsuits. This overall contributes to costly litigation fees and compensation costs for Nestle. So we've come up with a brief 8-point plan for Nestle on how to avoid more mislabeling lawsuits and general problems. So 1 is to list objective product information on the front of the package. 2, to state the truth and nothing but the truth. 3, to include easy-to-read mandatory information for consumers' references. And 4, to create a recycling program to reuse materials from products. 5, if the ingredient is not present, then do not state it on the label. 6, to use recycled materials for labels in order to save costs and to help the environment. Number 7, to not use misleading or false statements on labels. And 8, to not create misleading food product names.
Okay. Thank you, and that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Questions?
You certainly have told us all the things you think we've done wrong.
Yeah.
And I would argue that we have made huge strides. So my question is, what is it that you really feel is going to happen that will resume the trust that we've always had and have recently not held as high in the public's view by these, how will this 8-point plan speak to what you believe is our restoring of trust and customer confidence?
Yeah, I think it's because like your values have not been, the past year, been in accordance with what you have been doing, like with mislabeling and misleading consumers. So therefore we came up with this 8-point plan that kind of goes back to your values of being having honestly and providing nothing but like the truth. So we think that if you just follow these, but also like use them when coming with labeling, that it could also help you gain back that consumer trust.
So, you mentioned that there's been some recent financial losses, and you tied that to consumer mistrust and making decisions to go to competitors. Is there research that backs that up? Could there be other reasons for these financial losses? Could it just be, you know, that the particular product has gone down throughout the market and it's not due to consumer decisions?
Yeah, I mean, as you stated, Nestle states that the reason why their net sales have gone down is because of deflation that has happened after 2015, but we also think that there's more to it and it's just not deflation. So what we came up, because of the boycotts and other things that's been going on, we decided, like we stated, that there are a little research about it, that it also stopped some of the sales, especially for Poland Spring, so kind of did stop some of the sales, and that's why, I don't know if you saw, but the water sales were also went down by a portion.
Can I ask what you mean by objective product information? And how is that different from number 2 or number 3?
I think it was just saying like maybe having like the main things that like if you're say like you're organic or something, having those main objectives be in the front, or like, or if you're not organic, then don't include them at all.
So I'm drinking Poland Springs.
Okay.
What would I want? What are you saying that I should have on the bottle that's objective product information?
I think
That
you
I
should.
can't use the name?
Yeah. I think we'll have to change the whole name. Probably change the whole name altogether, because just the name itself is
that's
misleading. Because it's not, the water's not even from Poland Spring anymore. The Poland Spring has been dried up over the past 50 years. So now it's just groundwater. So maybe just rebranding it, like giving a new name, that would be a good start to go.
Groundwater.
Yeah.
I like it.
Another example of this is Aquafina and Dasani have labeled on their labels purified water. So it's just water. It's not spring water and it's not groundwater, it's no tap water, but it's just purified water.
And Poland Springs has not done this.
There says spring water.
Okay. I don't think we should be board members of Poland Springs at Nestle anymore.
I'm thinking,
Yeah.
could I have a Dasani?
Yeah.
Would you like us to give them feedback,
Yeah,
or
let's-
because it's a class exercise?
Yeah.
No,
that-
feedback is good. No, that was,
Is
that
it
was
feedback,
asked if you
is
could.
it feedback based on the paper or feedback if they were presenting to IBEC? Which feedback do you want?
General feedback on the presentation, whatever seems appropriate.
Okay. I thought that you did a very good job showing the whole history. I think that was excellent. I think that you did a good job dividing the legal, the ethical, and the business. That was great, and the slides clearly showed that, and I liked how you each took a turn. It was really easy for us to see each of those. They were all interwoven. I guess some feedback on things that, maybe weren't as clear. I'm not sure conflating the recycling with the product labeling makes a lot of sense to me. If the problem is that we're not being ethical because we're not clearly labeling our products, I think then, just focus on that. Recycling's great. I love recycling. But that seems like it seems like you're bringing that in unnecessarily. And I do think that it would be important to have some kind of stats, even if they're not specifically stats on our consumers, but consumers in general, stats on how financial loss can be tied to mistrust. So, then we can see, you could present that, you could say, okay, the statistics show that if consumers mistrust you, and here we went online and we found some, there's some forums where people are talking about boycotting Poland Springs because it's really groundwater, and then say, and look at what's happened to your financials, then as a board member, I'd be like, ooh, okay, I can see a tie there. So yeah, but I think you guys did a good job, and it's a really important topic, and I don't think Nestle is listening.
I really loved the line, Nestle isn't trustworthy anymore. But I would suggest that you look at the kinds of Edelman trust indications for this year, and you look at Fortune's ranking of 100 most admired companies and see where Nestle's is. Because I think you do need to dovetail your point. You do need to substantiate that. If you were being an activist and you were contacting the company, and we certainly see this at IBEC, it's important even in what you're doing, if you're playing that role, to really realize that if you want people to change, it's important that you frame it in less judgmental terms. which is really hard to do when there's egregious stuff. But what you've got, I think, by this whole issue of trust, I think you could substantiate very easily with a couple of the polls that each year, Gallup also has polls. You could be able to say, trust must be your most important desire. And the point that Maria made about tying it into financials would be great if there's some way of doing it. But I think the notion that you've got repetitive problems of the same mislabeling suggests they haven't gotten the message on trust. And you might have wanted to have thrown in some additional pieces of information about the importance of trust in companies, because there's lots of stats on that. Because they're obviously continuing to do the same old because of profits. And there's got to be research, millennials and others, that suggest that they may be running into a situation where the market is really changing, and this kind of behavior is going to, from a very neutral business standpoint, aside from the fact that none of us want to, and this isn't Poland Springs, by the way, aside from the fact that none of us wants to drink their water. And I think the other thing, because you've got you did a really nice job with this 8-point plan, it might be helpful, and you probably already do in your paper, to flush out a little bit about how each of these would make a change. And I agree that with what Maria said, that maybe the whole idea of the recycling thing may be more challenging than you want, because all of your points should be designed to help them get back trust.
Yeah.
But
although that could be part of, showing that you're a good citizen might be a way.
But you have to but you have to make that clear and not let us draw that conclusion, because as board members we need to be defensive.
I think the only other thing I would say, and this has nothing to do with your presentation, but if you're making this into a paper, it's a consideration. It's very difficult to come to a board of directors of what is kind of essentially a holding company of multiple brands, because I didn't know until you said this that Poland Spring was ultimately owned by Nestle. I knew about the dog and that stuff. I didn't realize that was owned by Nestle. So it's tough, because the board of directors is sitting here thinking like, well, nobody, it's not that they're not boycotting. People who are boycotting Poland Springs aren't also boycotting all these other things in all these other countries. So if there's ways that you could talk about how there's increased transparency into companies and their various products, and how consumers are tying that all together, I think that would be impactful too. It's tough though.
You've done a lot of research.
Yeah, it was really good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice job.
Wow, now I hate Nestle.
I don't know what year this was. I don't know when they bought Poland Springs, but I think about 20 years ago, I remember Poland Springs had an issue because Livingston Taylor did their ad. I mean, it had this jingle, and it got changed. Originally it was Poland Springs coming to you straight from Maine.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can't remember what they made it change to, but it wasn't that, because I remember hearing a change, and I looked it up, oh yeah, misleading, misrepresenting, and that it was that same sort of thing. And that might have even been before they were owned by Nestle, but they clearly, nobody learned their lesson, because they kept on doing the same sort of thing.
But I think part of it is also there has to be some amount of awareness amongst the customer.
Oh, yeah.
Because how can you go everywhere and there's Poland Springs. You must understand how much they sell, and that one little tiny spring in Maine cannot sustain this.
Exactly.
So there's also some impetus on the consumer.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm much more educated now, which I appreciate.
That's good.
Thank you.
Good work.
Thank you.
Great work.
Enjoy the rest of your presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How do you get Tom? I told Pearl that I would tell her about when we were